Hello, hello. Do you hear me? Okay. It's first mistake for a great way. Hello. Do you hear me? Okay. So first mistake. Let me start again. Wait. Hello. Do you hear me? Okay. Good morning to everyone. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the multicultural debate, European Remembrance, debating with the protagonists of the Cold War. I would like to start by saying that all of us at the Auto Creation Foundation dreamed of organizing this conference in Warsaw. Unfortunately, the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic and mutation have derailed our plans. We had to decide on an internet formula. We regret that we don't have the opportunity to meet face-to-face, but I hope that the pandemic will be brought under control and that there will be still the opportunity to meet face-to-face. Now, I would like to introduce the purpose of our conference and to present the agenda. Our main aim is to enable project participants from different countries to the broadest and fullest possible understanding of the issues related to the construction of an order after World War II in Europe and in the whole war, and in the consequence of the so-called Cold War. Our aim is also to develop in discussion an action plan for a Europe without divisions, so that the Iron Curtain will never be repeated. We would also like to consider how to involve the young generation in the building of the united Europe. I also say that our conference is support from the European Commission in the frame of the Europe for Citizenship, and that the conference is recorded and broadcast live. Let me invite you to watch the film.
Ósmy maja 1945 roku. Po 6 długich latach kończy się II wojna światowa, najbardziej krwawy i tragiczny konflikt zbrojny w dziejach ludzkości. Fakt, że milkną strzały, nie oznacza jednak, że w Europie zapanuje pokój. Na mocy konferencji zorganizowanej w 1943 roku w Teheranie oraz w 1945 w Jałcie i Poczdamie przywódcy trzech mocarstw – Stanów Zjednoczonych, Wielkiej Brytanii i ZSRR decydują o kształcie powojennego świata i podziale stref wpływów w Europie.
Jeszcze przed rozpoczęciem konferencji wielkich mocarstw w Teheranie sojusznicy zachodni zaproponowali rozwiązanie kwestii granicznych w ten sposób, że wschodnią granicę Polski powinna określać tak zwana linia Curzona. Natomiast jeśli chodzi o granicę zachodnią, to sojusznicy zachodni zgadzali się z propozycjami wysuwanymi przez Stalina, a mianowicie związanymi z propozycjami przesunięcia zachodniej granicy Polski.
Wykorzystując ugodowość i sympatię amerykańskiego prezydenta Franklina Delano Roosevelta oraz zachowawczą postawę brytyjskiego premiera Winstona Churchilla, Stalin przyjął, że po zakończeniu wojny radziecka strefa wpływów sięgać będzie tak daleko, jak daleko doszedł sowiecki żołnierz.
Musimy pamiętać, że konferencja w Jałcie odbywała się na przełomie lutego i marca 1945 roku, w którym to czasie Armia Czerwona praktycznie rzecz biorąc stała już na linii Odry.
Fakt pokonania hitlerowskich Niemiec tylko zaostrzył apetyt Stalina. Podążając na zachód, Armia Czerwona zajęła nie tylko terytorium Polski, ale w zasadzie przejęła kontrolę nad całą Europą Środkową i Południową, zajmując przy okazji 1/3 terytorium Niemiec.
Now I would like to present a Polish point of view in this case. Let's start with our presentation. Let me share you presentation in PowerPoint. Do you see the presentation? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
Okay. So the first question: when did the Second World War start? World War II started on September 1st, 1939. Germany attacked Poland without a declaration of war. The first attack, a terrorist attack, actually occurred at 4:40 in the morning. The Germans bombed Wielun, a small town, no importance from the military strategy point of view. The idea was to create fear among the civilian population. The Germans dropped the bombs while people were sleeping. The bombs destroyed 75% of the houses and monuments in the town. Up to 2,000 people died. At the same time, the German army crossed the entire length of the Polish border. The total length on the front was about 1,600 kilometers. During the first hours of the war, the Germans dropped bombs of many Polish cities. The targets were railway lines and junctions, factories, as well the hospitals and settlements inhabited by innocent people. 1,000 died. 17th of September 1949, Poland was invaded by the Soviet Union. Russia stabbed Poland in the back. The Russian Soviet soldiers were very cruel. They murdered prisoners of war and civilians. Thousands of people were arrested. The Russians arrested the Polish elite, soldiers, scientists, doctors, engineers, lawyers, teachers, civil servants, and businessmen. In 1940, they began mass murders. At least 22,000 people were shot in the forests near Katyn, Miednoje, and Kharkov. Which countries contributed to the outbreak of the World War II and why? On the screen we see Ribbentrop, Stalin, and Molotov. 23rd of August 1949, Germany and Russia signed a non-aggression pact. Hitler and Stalin agreed on the division of the spheres of influence in Europe. The Third German Reich and his country of Adolf Hitler, were carrying out a plan of the conquer of Europe. Germany wanted to attack the Soviet Union. It was also about natural resources, territories, and free labor. On the other hand, the Soviet Union and Joseph Stalin also dreamed of conquering Europe and the world. After the Bolshevik victory in Russia in 1918, the communists wanted to bring about revolution in the other European countries. Stalin wanted communism to cover the whole of Europe. The main aims of Germany was to conquer new territories and new colonies, conquer Soviet Union, gain free labor, and gain natural resources. The Russian goals was conquer Europe, spread of communism, destruction of nation states, liquidation of the capitalist classes. Question: what was wartime like in our country, in Poland? From our point of view, wartime was a time of a total destruction. Germans and Soviets destroyed Poles and Poland without equal hatred. Cities and villages were destroyed. You can see the pictures from, I think this Wieluń. Hospitals were bombed. Mass execution were carried out. Germans deport people to slave labor and concentration camps. On the other hand, Russians deported people to slave labor in Siberia. Poles were thrown out of their homes, property taken away and dropped, and deported. Russian brutally raped women. Millions of people lost their loved ones. Hunger and poverty reigned. And the question is, what price did our country and people pay for being a victim of World War II? The consequences of the war caused by Hitler, Nazi Germany, and Stalin, Soviet Russia was that more 6 million Poles died, hundreds of cities were destroyed, thousands of villages too. Universities, factories, workplaces, neighborhoods, houses were destroyed. Losses are estimated at over 88 billion zlotych. It is over 200 billion euro. I would like to ask my brother Paweł to continue, okay? Thank you.
Hi guys, it is a great pleasure to be here. I hope you can hear me and see me. Please confirm.
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, great. I'm sorry for the quality of the audio. I'm in the bus and in the train, load training, so that's why it can be some technical problems. I would like to continue because it already started. Told you what happened, what had to face with the New World Order. The New World Order of the post-war was based on the one hand on the peace of conferences and established an international organization, United Nations. You already know that. And from the perspective of the political realism, it was based primarily on the balance between two superpowers, Soviet Union and the United States. Yes. And the balance was unstable. I'm sorry for the third. It was raised, among the other things, and arms race, space conquest programs, and reality between the two superpowers in the main parts of the globe, Afghanistan and Cuba. How the Cold War in Poland was looked like. First of all, it was elimination of the political oppositions, officials, and physical liquidation. Thousands of the political opponents were arrested and killed. The new authorities depended on the Moscow formed a single new communist party, which took over and monopolized power. The free media was abolished, private property was abolished, the economy was taken over by the state, borders were closed, and travel to the capitalist countries was banned. Only those I don't know if you can hear me. I have a Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a okay. So I will continue. Every protest and section of the population against the communism authorities was brutally suppressed. Things in Poznan in 1956, Gdańsk in 1970, Radom in 1976, strikes in 1981. Thousands of people were killed by the communist authorities. In order to destroy solidarity, the communist authorities imposed material law. Opposition activists were arrested. The communist authorities suppressed the desire for the freedom. The USA imposed sanctions of Poland, which basically paralyzed and already in fascist economy the People Republic of Poland. The imposition of material law and decades of draining Poland's economy to brink of the bankruptcy. The economists and other socialist countries found themselves in a similar tragic situation. The Soviet Union economy, focused on women and the armed race, has the greatest problems. It seems that it was the spectre of the bankruptcy of the social economy to lead to the relaxation and, of the communist system and Mikhail Gorbachev's description to introduce perestroika. It was a crisis to force the communism to organize particularly free election in Poland in 1989 and later of the reunification of Germany. What is the opportunities? The European Union is more than 4 million kilometers square. The European Union is 446 million inhabitants. The UAE has the third largest population in the world after China and India. In the 2010, the European Union GDP was 12 million to 79 trillion euro. The economy of the European Union was the largest economy of the single country in the United States. The UAE has enormous intellectual and economic potential, creating a common economic system using the strength of the member countries. But the threats, the aging of the UAE population, negative birth rate, economic marginalization of the Europe, lack of innovation, tendency of the rich UAE countries to develop at the expense of the poorer EU countries instead of the common economic policy. We can see it in Poland, for example, particular interest of the individual countries at the expense of the security and the community, Nord Stream 2, for example. Peers and individual rather than the common foreign policy, for the example, towards from Russia. Tolerance for the aggressive behavior and offensive sanctions. How can we encourage young people to learn about the history so that we let to division of the Europe does not happen again? So what led of the division of Europe to not repeated? Although it sounds like a cliche, it's to teach history because we can learn from the history many important and precious lessons. My father always said, you can see on the slide, we can learn from the mistake of the others, that we can that we will make far fewer than our own mistakes. And I think it's a good finish of this presentation and good direction for the future. Thanks, guys, and sorry for the problems with the sound and video.
Pavel, thank you for your presentation. Let me explain that Pavel is on a trip. He's traveling on a bus, I think. Is it a bus?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I hope that you understand and hear everything. Following our agenda, I would like to present the Slovenian point of view. And the presentation is prepared by David Tomazin. I hope that, okay, Tomazin, okay, explain that Pavel is on a trip. He's traveling on a bus, I think. Is it a bus?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Hi, I can still hear the reverb.
Oh, yes, I do. So I would like to present David is 23 years old. He's graduated from the History and Philosophy on the Faculty of Arts, University of Ljubljana. So he's a specialist. He's certificated tourist guide on a national and local level. His special interest in contemporary history, especially in the beginning of 90s, and Nietzschean philosophy. He is currently on his way of achieving the master degree from history and philosophy. He's very active, and his local community is a part of the tourist association in Szmarje. Szmarje is local students club Grosz, climbing club Ascendo. He's an active climber and teacher of climbing. Please.
Hello, everyone. I just need to ask, do I share my presentation or will you do that?
So you should do that.
Okay, yeah. Just
yeah.
so I know. Evo.
I have one ask to everyone. Could you turn on your camera? It's so much easier to speak, to talk with you, to see your face. I think it's a conference, so we can see everyone. Thank you.
So hello again, my name is David, as said. I come from Grosuplje. If you ever come to Slovenia, it's very near Ljubljana, 10 kilometers southeast. Now I'll be guiding you through the history of Slovenia, a very shortened view. We'll first look through the historical context, the wartime, time after the war, the Cold War, Slovenia and European Union today, and look at the methods to deal with our descendants. Slovenia was before in Yugoslavia, in the first Yugoslavia, and was attacked on the 6th of April 1941, 2 years after the attack on Poland. Since we tried to maneuver between Germany and Soviet Union, but in 41 Hitler decided to attack Yugoslavia on his own. Some of it was annexed by Germany, some of it annexed by Italy. The independent state of Croatia formed on its own. Serbia was occupied by Germany, so the whole Yugoslavia was divided. And in the same month, there was a lot of Slovenians gathered around trying to form a front to attack the occupators. And we formed a liberation front. In Slovenian, it's called Osvobodilna fronta on 26th April 1941. Those were, the Liberation Front is a unique phenomenon in Slovenia because it was confederally built. There was the communists, we call them Sokoli, the Christians and the liberals, Christians and communists, and they formed a pact of maneuvering, and they started to collecting materials, doing haikas and actions towards Italians and the Germans. This was all through the war. Now in 41, the war began. The integration of Slovenian population was slow. Occupators did a lot of war crimes, though Italians were a bit softer than the Germans. Now the 1942 was the hardest for Slovenians, since the Italians pressed on the partisan movement, which was doing okay. But the partisans managed to get to 1943, when the Italians Italy capitulates and the partisan movement expands. Now the Germans took over the Italian part, but still the partisan movement had a lot of people behind itself. Now, as we'll get to Slovenia today, we're still divided, since a lot of actions during the World War II were very hard to pinpoint. I put this picture here because you can see a priest with the partisans, since today you will hear the interpretations of history that partisans were anti-theistic and were against the church. But for example, all of my grandparents and grandmas were in the partisan movement, for example, but no one was in the Communist Party after the war, and they didn't have that much of a great time, for example, and we were treated as lowlifes, for example, but they were all in the partisan movement, though they didn't deal with the Communist Party after the war. So just so we're clear, in 1943, the communists took over the Liberation Front, and that's where the building of an authoritarian of a power structure of a government started to form through 1944 and 45. Now, after the war ended in 15 May 1945. The communists received a lot of domobranci and Slovenians who cooperated and with the occupator, and they decided to murder them and bury them in mass graves, which was not talked about in Yugoslavia. My grandma didn't know about it, and learned about it in the 70s, 80s. Which is still a problem, because we don't know for some graves where they are, where people were buried. There are a few pictures. For example, this is the southeastern photo is the symbol of Liberation Front. People were drawing signs of Triglav, the highest mountain of Slovenia, everywhere. For example, on the low left photo, you will see three partisans. On the left is Franz Rozman Stane, a national hero who was killed, and in the middle, Boris Kidric, who was sleeping only 2 hours during the war, managed to form a lot of connections. And you see at the upper right corner the oath of the domobranci and the collaborators to Hitler during the war, which is a very problematic thing still in Slovenia, because a lot of not Christians, but a lot of domobranci started cooperating with the occupators, which is sort of a problem also today. The occupator comes, and this was a problem in Slovenia. The Germans come here, take your freedom away, and then the partisans come shooting the Germans, and then Germans raid the village from where the partisans were shooting, and they raided the village, and people started to blame partisans for those killings. I don't know if you heard the Lidice massacre in Czechoslovakia during the war. I think the Czechs killed Reinhard Heydrich, and then the Germans killed a lot of Czechs, but the Czech people didn't blame the Czech people. They blamed the occupator for the crimes. However, after the war, the Communist Party of Yugoslavia was connecting all the lower national communist parties in Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, and we formed a new Yugoslavia, the second Yugoslavia, which had two histories. From 1945 to 1948, we were connected to the Soviet Union. But then Tito started to build his own cult of personality and his own way with Cardel, as you can see here. I don't know if you see my mouse forming around one particular individual. This is Edward Cardel, right above the dog. And those were main ideologic people who formed the ideological economic structure of second Yugoslavia. And we were trying to get to a self-guided, self-managing socialism, which would be different from the Soviet. And during the whole of the Cold War, we tried to maintain a non-aligned movement. Tito was trying to form a union of nations who weren't divided between America and Soviets. Now, I'm not educated enough to give you a wholesome idea of how this looked, since I don't have the economic background. But people still have a lot of good memories of Yugoslavia, because we really tried to have a middle way. Also, Yugoslavia had a lot of its own problems. We had an army system of Yugoslav National Army, which was very authoritarian. Stane Kaučić tried to form a liberal, tried to liberalize Yugoslavia, but didn't manage to. That's why the economic structure started to collapse into itself in the 80s. The main problem in the end of the 80s and in 1990 and 1991 was the economic problems, since we went into the phase of hyperinflation, and the Serbians had taken a lot of money from the National Bank of Yugoslavia, which was a turning point for Slovenians, and we started to accepting legislature which would lead to independence, which happened in 1991 after a short war, 10-day war. And even in Yugoslavia in 1986, there were a lot of programs called Yugoslavia and Europe. And even Yugoslavia was starting to point itself towards European Union. Then the independence and the wars in Yugoslavia happened, and Slovenia had to reach European Union on its own. Opportunities for the Slovenian European Union today, I would say definitely in the intellectual efforts, since we are right in the middle. We could form a union between West and East. Advanced studies in science, social sciences, and humanism, I think, would be the greatest asset to European Union. To represent an ideal or an example of different cultures joining with a common goal, especially economic prosperity, which I would think would be also could be a biggest threat to Europe, since Yugoslavia tried to manage 6 different economies from Yugoslavia. After the war, Slovenia was the most developed. Bosnia was not. Even at the end of Yugoslavia in 1989, Slovenia was 7 times more advanced than Bosnia, than Kosovo, which is a huge difference between nations. So I think the European Union has to do something else. In Yugoslavia, the problem was a lot of money from Slovenia went to Kosovo, and then none of the nations developed. Slovenians tried to convince the federal government to leave more money in Slovenia, but still keep the money pumping, because in Kosovo then started to happen that people weren't working. Just didn't have to work, since they got a lot of money. Also, to European Union, I would consider threats to be internal, fear difference, a rigid sense of self, an inflated ego, preoccupied with our own importance, history, habits, would be a big threat, and external. Now, too many foreigners we know are not good for the systems, or a bad assimilation, bad control over immigrants. I would consider these to be the threats. And let me just mention that Slovenia is running the European Union now with the logo "Together Resilient Europe." And just to finish up, I think I'm a graduate student of history, and I know that you can't just teach history because you can have bad teachers. I think teaching history through dialogue is the way, since dialogue, intellect, well-read people are key to an open future. Since in Slovenia we don't have that much dialogue, people are closing in, especially now during the COVID. People don't want to test their own beliefs. They don't travel as much. And I think we didn't have good teachers in the past. For some reason, I don't know, but I would think these are the paths to a better future. Thank you for your attention. These are some of the memes I think are pinpoint to the core of Slovenia today, Yugoslavia still, Balkan boomer, still nostalgic about Yugoslavia, and the Balkans don't regret the war crimes. It happens a lot. Thank you for your attention.
David, thank you for a very interesting presentation. We had idea to organize short question and answer session. So I would like to ask you about two things. First of all, do you know how many people died in your country during the Second World War? And second question, how is possible that Tito have break the relationships with the communists and Russia? How it was possible? Because Yugoslavia was a little bit different country in Europe in this time.
Just a second. I don't know the exact number. 100,000 people approximately that we know of are the cool. These are the 100,000 people were the victims of in between war battles and after war massacres. So these are the whole. Not as much as in Poland, thank God, but still. Also, if I understood correctly regarding the second question, how is it possible that Yugoslavia managed to maneuver between West and East? Is this correct? I still question that. I don't know exactly how Tito managed to actually make a border between himself and Stalin, since Stalin was really savage. I know that Tito and Kardelj and the main communists in Slovenia and Yugoslavia were trained in the Soviet Union. However, in those wars, in those years, towards 1948, when the collision happened, Tito was already trying to form some how to say outer politics connections with the other nations. I think it just happened. Stalin also, I think he saw that he wouldn't be able to turn Yugoslavia into its own satellite.
To control.
Yeah, but still, a lot of this type of history is enshrouded in a fog, since we don't really know, or at least I don't know, the higher politics of this, because the higher politics is its own story, and historians usually we don't really know what's happening behind the curtains.
Okay, thank you, David. Do you have any questions to David? Vasilis, Maria, Matthew, Anya, I see you. Okay. You don't have any questions? Okay. So let's go. Let me introduce the presentation of Spain. This presentation will present Efren Zaplana Martinez. Is my pronunciation correct?
Perfect.
Okay. So Efren Zaplana Martinez lives in a small town called Dolores since he was born the 15th of September 1991. He studied tourism management in Alicante University and finished his studies in Ireland with the Erasmus program. He is married and he has 6-month-old son. Congratulations. He's the counselor of tourism in Dolores and also he's working in a campsite resort. Efrain.
Good morning to everyone. Hello.
Hi.
You start already? Hello. Do you want we start?
Yes.
It's okay? Perfect.
Yes, you can start.
Okay, so
Could you close your microphone a little bit because
I don't know if I can because I have some problem with the camera and micro. I think it's solved, but
Camera is perfect, just microphone.
could you speak a little bit upper?
see, 1 second.
You can close to the computer. You can come a little bit closer so we can hear you better.
Okay, we see your presentation.
Perfect. In this second presentation, we are going to talk about the most important war or the most damaging wars in Spain and also in the world.
Wait a moment, please. Speak a little bit up.
Vale, 1 second.
Louder,
Better?
a little bit louder.
Louder.
One moment. In better?
A little bit.
Okay, perfect. In this second presentation, we are going to speak in the point of view of Spain for our wars and the world wars and the opportunities and the problem we have in the European Union. Specifically the Civil War, Second War, and the Cold War. We want to start saying this part of the book for Eugenio de Nora from his book Passion of Life. Spain. 2000 years, it is construction still. This is because many years we have also many problems because of, if you know Spain or you love, but we have many characteristics. The diversity is one of the most important. We are a country with relationship with diverse geographical area, also South America and Europe. Second. You are looking the presentation? Perfect. Okay.
We can see. Yes, we can.
Perfect. We want to show these pictures, okay, to show like what is the 20th century politics in Spain. We finished the Civil War, we create the Constitution in Spanish, but now many people in the country feel like it's like old, okay? We have problems with the nationalism, some nationalism, okay? They feel like not totally Spanish, they have political, demographic, and sociological conflicts. In the 20th century, the wartime, about this picture of Francisco de Goya, maybe some of you know, this is in the Prado Museum in Madrid. They say there have always been clashes between inhabitants of Spain. This is like in our countries, in our Slovenian people spoke about that. Is many people feel like different teams, you know, like to say, and we fight for everything. The start of the civil war, okay, in Spain it was the Second Republic in the government till the opposition to the regime, the Second Republic, culminate in the Cup of July, end of July, the 18th of July of 1936. It was organized by part of the Spanish army with the civilian support, of course, to the Spanish, the Civil War. It was a conflict with that prelude the second war, before of the second war. After that, thousands of Spanish people have to go into the exile of reprisal. We are going to show a couple of pictures also of the problem of this war. And those of people who want to stay in the country, you can imagine what they suffer. They suffer the repression for the people who made the victory in possession of the defeats. The Franco dictatorship, it was in Spain till the end of 1975, till October. So we suffered this dictatorship for many years. The Guernica. So these paintings play against the barbarism and terror of all of wars, not just in Spain, just in every country. This is one of the most famous paintings of Picasso. What is the problem of any war? In this case, the Spanish one, the exile. The order of this was so the following orders. This problem is not just in Spain. The latest dates you see in Afghanistan, they have the same problem. The people want to live because anyone wants, just the people who are making the war, anyone wants the war. Also the revenge, you can see the people for the government taking the revenge for the communists or for the Republican people. And also this is in big cities, but also in our town we suffer some case. This is Josefa, is a young woman from Dolores, was sentenced to death at the age of 18. And what was his crime? It was to distribute an information leaflet about the poor working condition that workers had and the solution that the Communist Party offered to the end to the extreme poverty. So it's amazing. In now in 2021, we see that this is impossible, but in war times it was the common. So for the second World War, from us we have not many not information to say, because we have not a paper important, because we finished in the 1939, sorry, the Civil War, and we were destructive. So it's not the fundamental paper. But we saw what is not our view of point. What is that? The Second World War has been the most dramatic and destructive military conflict in Europe and the world have experienced the history. We thought that we can compare the war and the World War. This is in the left, the fusilamiento de Goyas, okay, the revenge, and also something of people in Poland. Also a comparative in the Spanish Civil War and the Nazi atrocity in Poland. The only thing we can say we participate that it was a little bit a false neutrality. Maybe some of you agree. In compensation for the aid received during the Civil War, okay, some other countries, they helped Franco to win the war. So, okay, so they support not like many things, but moral, material, logistical, or strategic. In 1939, it was declared the neutral state, but shortly after, Franco regime declared not belligerent. When when Franco government sent the contingent soldiers to against the communists, the Blue Division. Also, for us, the Cold War helped the Franco dictatorship from isolation the integration. For Franco, it was good this war because they can develop something in Spain. Okay, this is the goal. Like the Cold War helped the Franco from the isolation to integration. In Spain, Franco regime stopped the repression and control left-wing people and movement. At the same time, it provides many fleeing Nazis. Okay. In 1953, the dictatorship regime ceded places of territory to the United States to establish the military bases. When they, at the end of almost this presentation, we see the problems and the opportunities for European Union. This averages the existence of political parties with fundamentalist, exclusive, xenophobic, and racist ideologies that radicalize the political life. Radical, exclusive, and disintegrating political nationalism. Also, neoliberal economic model that tends to concentrate wealth in a few, intensifying social inequalities and during the system of welfare state, a system of non-integrated ethic and cultural ghettos, private interests that prevent the application of principle of sustainability development, okay, feeling among the public justice not disquiet, and terrorism and violence. And also along, this is a few, okay, we have more, but this is a good average. And also many opportunities, extreme mixed economy models, okay, like I said, such as the one supported by the welfare state, raised to the world more fairly and provide optimal living standard of poverty, education and balance, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, improve the integration of immigrants, okay, better decisively for sustainable development. Some of them, they are in the Agenda 2030, okay. Is already in the list for working with that. Action against the climate change, okay, and environmentalist and recovery of rural and natural area, and of poverty at war, okay. In the Civil War already the people were speaking about that, but in this century is already problem about that. Peace and justice, policy of developing countries to reduce the debt and separate them from us. This is the view, the European unity, a goal: respect, tolerance, freedom, solidarity, cooperation, equality, justice, sustainable peace. I think many of you are going to agree of that. Together, we advance stronger. This is a thing we thought hardly. Europe is also extremely diverse and complex, with its different territories, people, and nations that have historically lived in continuous competition, which has given us a past plagued by country conflict and confrontation. Since the second half of the 20th century, the light of peace and progress has been glimpsed on the European horizon, coming from the hand of the European Union. The prosperity and peace that the Union of the Nation of Europe brings us is so evident that it forces all Europeans to redouble their effort to achieve united Europe. On the contrary, delving into the division of Europe will return us to the past. This is clear. Or we advance together and stronger, or we are going to go back and repeat the words of our common history. This is the in the world, or you understand, you educate, or you are going to repeat the problem. In problem, we understand everything. Words, the most normal problem. And our presentation is, that's it. This is the presentation.
Fred, thank you for your presentation. I have a few questions for you. Okay. First of all, I would like to ask you, how did you live in Spain in the Iron Curtain times?
Oh, I cannot hear you so good. Could you repeat, please?
Excuse me?
Yes. Could you repeat, please?
Sure. The first question, how did you live in Spain in the Iron Curtain time? What was the main problem for people in Spain? How do you think?
But in relation of?
So there's a very similar question on chat, so you can read the question from Matthew.
One second. The problem is I cannot dislink the presentation. One moment. No. Sorry. Yes. About the life under Franco-Spanish, you mean that Matthew tell us? The people, it was not, you mean you have not the liberty to make everything. But I mean, I have not lived this, but about my father say they have not the liberty to do nothing. My mother cannot go to the bank. They cannot go to many areas alone, you know. It's like something we compare about Afghanistan things. They have not, you have not the liberty, you know. And if you are against this dictatorship, so you are, you see many regrets, and or you go to the exile, or you have to stay in silence that you are not Republican or you are not communist, you know. I don't know if this answer complete your question.
Friend, I have
Matthew, we cannot hear you.
Do you have any question for a friend? You can write it on the chat, of course.
It's not a question, but I would like to say that after this presentation, I can see that we share the same theories. When we speak about threats, we speak the same about xenophobia, isolation, nationalism. I think it's we have to face it in all our countries with the same problems.
It's about this problem is, I think everyone will have, so we need like European Union, we need to, we say, working together and to be stronger, because if not, we are going to go back.
Then I have another question.
Yes.
Could you explain what was happened with the U.S. military bases in Spain?
Well, in the military bases, okay. No, in Spain we have not the many how to say, not opportunity, many help to give, because at the end of the war, okay, we have to reconstruct the country, but we open something because of it. They were here, okay. It was an opportunity to recreate the country, okay. You mean about the Cold War? You mean about the, no, Peter?
Could you repeat?
You mean about the Cold War?
Cold War.
We let them some areas, okay, and also they spend in Spain for some materials for the war, but we have no opportunities to make more. We let stay in the country, you know, and a little bit nothing more. We sell materials for the arts, for the war. Okay. We support a little bit, but no many work to develop a little bit Spain, to have some work for the people and develop the country.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions for Efren? Theodora, I see you have.
No.
Daniel, you have a question. Matthew, Ricky, why? Ricky, I have a question for you. Do you think that it's easier to live in Spain or in Poland in the Iron Curtain times?
For me,
how do you think? Yes.
In this moment, well, for sure, Poland. Actually, I was living
no, right now in Iron Curtain times.
Yeah, I think so in Poland because, well, I think it was worse in this time in Poland than in Spain. Well, in Spain the situation was really bad, but I think in Poland it was worse. The Germany Empire was more what was worse in these kind of countries. I think so.
Maria, how do you think? Maria Predi. Hello. Miria, how do you think?
The thing, Peter, the thing in this time, we were not like the principal actors, you know, so we have not the, you know, in this Iron Curtain. Yeah.
Anya, do you have a question for Efren? Okay. So thank you, Efren, for your interesting presentation and your answers. I would like to introduce you Portugal presentation made by FAIUP, Federación de Asociaciones Juvenis do Distrito de Braga. Daniel Lamazares.
Hello.
Could you tell us something about you, because we have no information about you?
Okay, so actually I'm from Spain, but I'm living now in Portugal. My studies are in marketing and market research, and my link with this story is that I was helping research about monumental and historical buildings, traditions and legends of my region in Leon. And then also I was working as a touristic guide from Portugal and from Spain, from the University of Leon.
Okay. So, could we start?
Yeah, of course. So, hi everybody. Welcome to the Portuguese presentation. Let me. I'm trying to share. Yeah. Can you see the presentation?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So we will start with an overview of what we're going to present here. Is like the World War II from the Portuguese perspective. How was the situation with the Iron Curtain and the Cold War in Portugal? Young people in history and important moments during these days. So let's start with the World War II from the Portuguese perspective. So there's like 4 main points that we can focus on. This the declaration of Portugal as a neutral country. That mainly all the world, we will see that the last year, Portugal become a non-belligerent because of some agreements that they signed with the United States. Also, the importance of the alliance that they have from the past with England, the focus of Portugal protecting this Portuguese independence, and the strategical situation of the Azores and the Green Cape. So the Azores and the Green Cape were strategically important locations which would have been to attack enemy's vessels in the area. As such, they were valuable for both Axis and the Allied force, but as they were owned by Portugal, any attack on these islands would turn Portugal hostile towards the invader. So Portugal was not strong enough to protect the islands by himself, but was strong enough to make it costly for the Allies or for the Axis. Instead of one of them were attacking the islands. So also in that moment, Portugal was in the need to make sure that Spain would stay neutral as they. So if Spain would join the Axis at that time, then Portugal would have to become part of the Allied force, and it would have made sense to station to Allied troops on the Azores and Green Cape. So taking over the Azores would make Portugal to look weak, and those could encourage to the Spain government ruled by Franco at that time to join the Axis and have the Axis invade Portugal. And that was really risky for the Allies, also for Portugal. But, however, these plans to invade the Azores were frozen as Portugal allowed the Allies to use the air bases in the Azores, allowing any Allied fleets in the area to give additional air support. So that was how they fixed the situation. Interestingly enough, as Portugal allowed the Allied force to use the Azores base, the Allied force also invaded East Timor, that was a colony from Portugal during the Second World War, to prevent that the Japanese were taking Timor from the Allied force. So Portugal sent troops to Timor to take it back from the Dutch and the British forces, as the Allies had promised to give it back to Portugal if they would send more troops to protect their part of Timor. But there before, like the Portuguese troops got there, before the Portuguese could arrive to Timor, the Japanese forces finally took over the Timor colony. So that's an example of wars are complex and many missions that were putting in risk the ally of Portugal, the situation of Portugal to be with the Allies or with the Axis. So the plans are made, and allies sometimes can become enemies, while enemies can become friends, depending on the situation during the Second World War for Portugal. So the Allied forces had many plans with the Portuguese colony that they didn't execute, as many of them were risky and unnecessarily. So this plan of what happened with Timor was one of the examples of how was Portugal facing with this situation. Meanwhile, it was cooperating with allies, trying to stay neutral in the world. That is one thing that we can say about the situation of Portugal in the Second World War. Also, it's important to name that in August of 1943, Portugal signed the Portuguese-British agreement that was listed bases in the Azores to the British. That was when Portugal started to cooperate, being neutral with the Allies. This was a key turning point in the Battle of the Atlantic because it allowed the Allies to provide air cover in the Middle Atlantic area, helping them hand submarines and protect the West. We can pass to the next picture to see where the situation in the Azores was. So we can see that it was a strategical point for the Allies because they allows to the fleet and the airplanes that were coming from the United States to stop in the middle of the ocean and then continue to Europe. So even Churchill, in one of the famous speeches with the prime minister, said that he would use an agreement from the 14th century, a treaty from the 17th century, that unaware that Portugal and England had the oldest operation alliance in the world. So the Anglo-Portuguese Treaty of 1373, Churchill used this treaty to cooperate with Portugal and to use it to remain Portugal as a neutral country, but be able to use the islands and to put bases in the Azores. And that was one of the crucial moments of the war, because that was an impulse to the Allies to control the Atlantic Ocean. And yes, also was named by the Churchill that this opportunity to record the appreciation of Her Majesty's government and which the Parliament and the British nation undoubtedly said to the attitude of this Portuguese government, whose loyalty to the British allies never were in the darkest hours of the war. That was part of one of the speech of Churchill, that since that also this alliance with England and Portugal was crucial for the way of how finished the war. Also, what happened during the Iron Curtain and the Cold War, because of this situation, Portugal was in a dictatorship time ruled by Salazar that was really appreciated by the England, how the Salazar was leading the country, but was not appreciated by the society. So at some point, the Carnation Revolution, that is one of a really unique revolution, because it was a peaceful one where the soldiers were in the side of the citizens. So that picture is really representative how was the revolution. That it was with carnations, that the soldiers have a flower in the arm, so in the band. So that was a peaceful revolution to take out the dictatorship to run in a democracy. So also all of these movements and the situation of Portugal during these times make Portugal become a surveillance, take the role of surveillance of the Atlantic Ocean, that allows them to be one of the founding members of the NATO. So yeah, all of this Portuguese situation, all of this neutral situation that Portugal take from the beginning until, let's say, the last year of the Second World War, where Portugal passed to be neutral to non-belligerent, makes Portugal to improve a lot of their economy. There was a good time for Portugal, instead of speaking about economy, because as they were taking a neutral position and not taking benefits from the alliance that they were taking from the United States and England, they were receiving all of these benefits that they make Portugal to be in a better situation than previously of the Second World War. And important moments, we can say that, for example, the peace stay in the Allied parts and cooperate with them allows, for example, the President Truman, you can see the pictures, signing the North Atlantic Treaty with the Portuguese ambassador, that allows the American forces to construct a small and short-lived air base in Santa Maria Island, that in that time was part of Portugal, and also allows American aircrafts pass through the largest airbase that was a Portuguese base. So all of these cooperations that Portugal, for example, and the United States allows Portugal to have a huge budget in the Marshall Plan that was rolled by the United States. We can also name some moments. One of the main persons during this time was Artistes de Sousa Mendes. We can see a telegram in the picture from the Portuguese dictator Salazar. So this was a Portuguese diplomatic that was under the strict instruction from the right-wing Salazar dictatorships that visas should be issued to refugee Jews and stateless people only with express permission from Lisbon. On Monday, 17 June, according to his son, Pedro de Sousa Mendes, he announced it loudly that from now on, I'm giving everyone visas. There will be no more nationality, race, or region. So Portugal at that time became one of the main characters to give an opportunity for the Jews that were in the Second World War affected to run and to exiliate to Portugal. So, and there is not exactly number of how many transit visas were issued, but allowing refugees to pass from France into Spain and then travel onward to Portugal. But the estimates range between 10,000 and 30,000 of youths were crossing across France and Portugal to be in Portugal or to even travel to American destinations. Also, we can see another picture that is a picture of a British Royal Air Force plane with Portuguese Azores during the Second World War II. When the Second World War II war broke out in the autumn of 1939, Portugal was one of the various European countries to declare its neutrality. Portugal was in a quite delicate position as the opening of the conflict, meaning that a declaration of neutrality was in the country's best interest, at least for the moment. This declaration of neutrality will allow Portugal to preserve her own foreign policy and take advantage of various opportunities that the world were provided to prosper. As I said, Portugal were taking advantage of these benefits to become neutral. In 1944, the Azores airfields were used to transfer bombers to the Pacific theater and played a key role in winning the War of the Atlantic for the Allies. It allowed more planes to land than from any aircraft carrier group and punched a hole in the Axis boat supply lines and put the Allied convoys lines within a range and land-based bomber protection. So the question of whether Portugal was truly neutral is a complex one, because Portugal was taking part, even if they declared neutral, they were taking part somehow in the winning of the Allies. A nation can only be considered truly neutral if it exists no basis or to other belligerent nations, and Portugal didn't take control of this role. And also, it's important to name about the refugees in Portugal during the Second World War and the memories of a paradise during the Transit War. Portugal is a neutral country. The Jews have a special protection in there. And also, they can say that the love letters during the Second World War in Portugal was also that there is a lot of museums now that are showing that part of the history. So, as we see this about love letters, there was a collector, Joana Correia, that posted on her blog the love letters exchanged by her grandparents during the Second World War. In that letters, we can see that the stamps of the army, the dates, most importantly, the paper stamp from the censorship that it was given by them. They would read the letters that arrived at the Azores military station. Most of the letters he sent were not read by the censorship, but the ones he would receive were probably from a fear of news from the outside coming into the army. In 1944, Churchill convinced Salazar to give the Great Britain the control of the Ladies Field in Azores for a strategic position that happened during the last year of the war. So the last year of the war was when Portugal passed to be neutral to non-belligerent because of these treatments. After the war, the United States and with Portugal control of this station for the Air Force in Azores until today. It also had an important role during the Cold War. Joana's grandfather was stationed in many places in Portugal, from Porto to Santarém, and in 1944 he went to serve in Azores and stayed there. When he came back from Azores to his town in Vila do Conde, he brought with him all the letters he had received from Joana's grandmother, and now there is a huge exposition related with these love letters in Portugal. And here in Cascais, there was organized an exhibition related with these memories of paradise, of the historical reconstruction of the life of 8 different people, with the fact that they had passed through Portugal, escaped from the Holocaust. The result of a contact group of the students with the art for survivors, or the family members, of the scope of one activities that are trying to educate the adults. So that is numbers, an exposition and a research that they were doing about it. And what is the Euro situation of Portugal with the Europe of today? It seems that it is, as I appreciate the effort from Europe to create a strong European feeling, and the Portuguese citizens are running in that direction. But there is also a huge afraid of some rights movements that negate the people's rights, that is becoming like thoughts of the past that can be linked also with this PowerPoint that this presentation that we were having. Also, what is the situation with the young people and the history nowadays in Portugal? Most of the youngsters are willing to involve in European programs, and also related with history. There is a huge feeling of protection, of the need of the protection of the rights, and so most of the youngsters view the history as a set of skills that they can use in the future or in their lives. And from the Portuguese side, that was everything. Obrigado. If you have any questions.
Obrigado, Daniel. It was very interesting presentation. I have a lot of new information. I hope that you too. So let's start with the questions. The first question of Teodora, Dimitri.
Sorry, I don't see where is the question.
Do you have any question? Teodora, unmute your microphone, please. Left down corner or you're on your screen.
Sorry, I don't have any question.
We have.
Don't always encourage others.
The presentation.
Teodora? No?
I think that it was marvelous. The presentation was marvelous.
Okay. So, Daniel, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you feel as a people, as Portugal at all, as a victim of the World War II?
No, I don't think that me or the other Portuguese feel victim as at least the youngsters. They feel as a victim of the Second World War. They realize what was the impact of the Second World War II and what is the effects and what are the probably the benefits, not the benefits, but what is like terrible moment from that generations, the benefits that have now for us, that can be like all these united project that we have nowadays, trying to avoid all these past wars. But I don't think that they have the youngsters of Portugal nowadays have a feeling of victims because of the Second World War. I don't know if I answered to your question correctly.
Yes. Thank you. So I have another question because it was only at the beginning. How do you feel? How do you think? How people feel in Portugal at the Iron Curtain times in your country? Do you think that? Do you know about? Did you know about the Iron Curtain? Do you feel it? Do you understand this problem, or it was something like you know? Daniel?
Daniel frozen.
Hello, Daniel.
Sorry, my internet went down. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Could you repeat me the question?
Yes, sure, of course. I would like to ask you how do you think people in Portugal really feel and understand what was the Iron Curtain? It was for you a real problem, or it was only kind of, you know, something like somewhere?
Yeah, I don't think that there was a feeling about the Iron Curtain. I don't think that Portugal was indeed feeling all of this tension between the both powers after the Second World War. So I don't think that Portugal, from the research that I have and the feedback that I have on the Portuguese people, is that they don't have a feeling that the generations that were living at that time, they were suffering this. There was something special a part of that. After this, there was the revolution in the country, so there was a new time coming in Portugal. So historically, I don't think that there was a really impact on the Portuguese society.
And how you think, how young people understand this part of history of Europe?
You mean the part of the history like during the Second World War and the Iron Curtain, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let's say that this part of the history is not really deep conversation in the Portuguese society. It's not something that the young generation are speaking about. So also I can say that if I can compare Spain and Portugal, I would say that also for our generation, from the younger generations in Spain, also I can see similarities that we don't talk too much about this. I mean, Spain was suffering a different situation after the Civil War, and Portugal have the revolution. So all this, like the revolution and all this passed from the dictatorship time to the democracy, probably was the main thing during that time. Is the thing that the people remember, is the story that the people are focused on. So there is not a huge feeling, a huge thoughts about this. There's not a strong feeling, some thoughts about this time of the Iron Curtain.
Okay, thank you. So, do you have any questions? Milia Stankovic, you have a question.
I think there's no more questions.
Milia?
No, I'm just listening so far, but thank you so much for asking.
Do you have any question, Barros? You have, I see. Miguel?
In my case, I don't have any specific question connecting with Portugal, but I can say was really interesting the presentation about Portugal. And what's happened also is like when in the high school and also in the school, this topic is not so much go deeper. They are speaking a little bit, but not so deeper, because also is nothing in the end affect a lot Portugal, because Portugal was already a neutral country. And also, for you understand, Portugal also don't have a big community of Jewish people, for example. So not so many. So because also about this is also one of the reasons Portugal is not so into that one. But also you have one council in France, and they were helping a lot of people to left the second war to Portugal. They allow the guys, they give the interest, the visa to enter in Portugal. And after that guy was really recognized, they save a lot of lives on the way to give permission to the guys to enter in Portugal. Is additional information for you to understand. And also, if someday you are coming to Portugal, on the border between Portugal and Spain, you have a great museum, financed also by Erasmus European program and e-grants, I think. And it's really nice to go there and see that thing.
Barros, thank you. Santa, do you have any question? No? I think that we have the same point of view on the Iron Curtain time, Latvia especially. So, okay, maybe Matthew have.
Maybe no question for me, but I think it's very interesting to see a different perspective from Portugal, which is neutral, and it's something we don't really learn in France, actually, about a neutral country during the war. So it was very interesting.
Okay, thank you. So Matthew is our next presenter. I would like to introduce you, Matthew Ducamp.
Maybe no question for me, but I think it's very interesting to see a different perspective from Portugal, which is neutral, and it's something we don't really learn in France, actually, about a neutral country during the war. So it was very interesting.
Okay, thank you. So Matthew is our next presenter. I would like to introduce you, Matthew Ducamp.
Maybe no question for me, but I think it's very interesting.
Do you hear me?
Perspective from Portugal, which is neutral.
Hello.
Something we don't really learn in France actually about a virtual country during the war. So it was very interesting.
Okay, thank you. So Matthew is our next presenter.
To się
I would
nagrywa
like
gdzieś.
to introduce you, Matthew Ducamp. Hello. Ducamp.
I think we can hear the recording, not the
hear me?
real-time conversation.
Hello. Kasia, could we stop record for a moment and start again? Maybe it could be happen.
It was very interesting.
Okay, thank you. So Matthew is our next presenter.
To się
I would
nagrywa
like
gdzieś.
to introduce you, Matthew Ducamp. Hello. Ducamp. Hello. Do you hear
I
me?
think we can hear the recording, not the
hear me?
real-time conversation.
Kasia, could we stop record for a moment and start again? Maybe it could be happen.
It was very interesting.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, we are trying.
Yes, okay. Send me back.
It's okay now?
Hello.
Nie jest.
Hello. Do you hear
I
me?
think we can hear the recording,
To
not
jest
the
jakieś źle.
real-time conversation.
Kasia, could we stop record for a moment and start again? Maybe it could be happen.
It was very interesting.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, we are trying.
Yes, okay. Send me back.
It's okay now?
Hello.
Nie jest.
Hello. Do you hear me?